You're listening to the Unlike Life podcast, hosted by Alexandra Cousins. In this podcast, we're going to really demystify disease and the polarization around all things health so you can heal yourself and thrive for real.
Want to know a sure way to end the inner war on diets, the inner confusion as to which diet is the correct one? Because let's face it, right now out there, the confusion is big and we're being pulled into all kinds of direction. And everybody has valid points, right? There's a ton of reasons to become a carnivore. There's a ton of reasons to be an omnivore. There's a ton of good reasons to be a vegan, a raw vegan, a fruitarian, whatever, you name it. There is good reasons for it. But this is how I teach my clients to really find what works for them. And here's a couple of points. Number one, if you really want to go about it, the best way to do it is have a period where you are deeply going into a cleansing mode, cleansing, regeneration mode. You're going to cleanse your liver, you're going to cleanse your bowels, you're going to regenerate your endocrine system. And once you have done that, and once you have released significant waste, which lives in all of us, and I don't want to hear, yeah, but detox isn't real. It is. I have too many images to prove that it is so. So go and do yourself a favor, do a deep cleanse. And unless you are releasing real waste from your liver, gallbladder, kidneys, and your intestines, colon, then it means the cleanse hasn't gone deep enough. So deep cleansing, and the best way to do this is through enzyme therapy. You can look at my 21-day total autophagy protocol. There is genuinely nothing better. I call it the Rolls Royce of detox. I've had 10 years of experience with cleansing, and this is by far the best one. However, cleansing is not the only way, right? It's not the only thing that we need to do to upgrade our health. Cleansing is step number one. Then step number two, work on regenerating your endocrine system. The best way to regenerate your endocrine system is through peptide bioregulator therapy combined with powerful herbs. Now, the tricky thing with herbs is that if you have poor quality herbs, if they are not wild, if they are not in the right quantities, taken in the right quantities, and yes, herbs need to be taken in higher quantities, especially when we are working with full herbs rather than extracts, which is way better because you're getting the full compound. You're not just getting an isolate. So upgrading your endocrine system, taking the time to do that, and this will take you at least anywhere between, I would say, if you're in great shape already, 6 weeks. If your health isn't doing so greatly, if your microbiome is poor, it's going to take you at least 3 months of work, sometimes more. Once your body has been cleansed, regenerated, invigorated, then you can experiment with different ways of eating. And very quickly, your body is going to give you feedback as to what feels best. And yes, of course, I'm always only talking about whole foods. I'm not talking about processed foods. So if you do decide to eat animal products, make sure that you're only eating the highest quality, wild, grass-fed, and truly grass-fed, not just grass-finished. You really want to make sure top of the range quality, no hormones, absolutely, and all of that, wild fish, etc. See how it feels. See how your body does when you are operating on those foods, and not just how you feel physically, but energetically, how your emotions are, how your digestive system works, how your elimination works. And then you do the same experiment with a plant-based diet, high raw food, lower raw food, more starches, less starches, because the reality is all these different diets can work for different people and also at different times. Ultimately, I always come back to, what does science say? Good science, not modulated and sort of biased science. Well, the majority of good science out there is going to direct us towards a Mediterranean diet. I grew up in the Mediterranean. I grew up in Italy and partially lived my summers and holidays in Tuscany. I saw what people ate there. And people actually, at the end of the day, eat quite simply. And oftentimes, naturally, there is a natural fasting period, especially sort of the more common, if you will, the poorer people, which are the people that I grew up with on a farm. When I looked at what they were eating, they had early dinner, breakfast comes late, so already there is some form of intermittent fasting. Typical Italian breakfast is actually quite minimal, typically only a coffee. In summer, it could be fruit or, yes, a piece of homemade pastry. And then there's lunch and there's dinner, and typically there isn't a lot of snacking in there, and there is definitely starches, vegetables, and some form of animal protein, but nowhere is near the quantities that a lot of people are dishing up and saying that is healthy. So either way, end the war of diets within your own body, within your own mind, because the reality is we can thrive in many different ways, but our body will tell us. For me personally, a predominantly plant-based diet that leans heavily into raw foods and even fruits works perfectly. But I have clients who are carnivore, I have clients who are omnivore, I have clients who are somewhere in between. So it's not about putting a diet onto you, but rather for you to find what works. And at the same time, cleansing the system. Upgrading, cleansing the system is a sure way of seeing what is going to work. Because if you still have parasites, if you still have pathogens, if you still are affected by things like candida and heavy metals, etc., how is your body going to actually speak to you? It is going to be impaired in its ability to communicate and to show you what is going to work because it's trying to constantly compensate. Similarly, if your pancreas, if your liver, if your spleen is not working optimally, of course you're going to have issues with starches, with sugars, and you're going to therefore feel better or feel partially better on a high protein, high fat diet. So, it's not about looking to compensate. It's about bringing your body back to balance. And once your body is actually back to balance, once your liver is working properly, once your digestion, microbiome is working properly, hormones are functioning, everything is kind of humming, then go and experiment and your body will give you the feedback that it needs. And yes, of course, I also sometimes suggest a DNA test, because a DNA test can give us some answers, even though we have to remember a DNA test is only ever just a blueprint of where you come from. It doesn't tell you about epigenetics. It doesn't tell you about your propensities with which you could be doing well. It just tells you these are the propensities towards dis-ease or dysfunction, but it doesn't really tell you what you could potentially be benefiting from in the specifics. But still, a DNA test can make an impact in terms of telling you what you, according to your blueprint, where you come from, what is going to work for you. And then, of course, there is also a level of experimentation and a level of deciding, choosing for yourself where you want to go. Any diet can work, so end the war on diets within you and begin to regenerate your body so it can start speaking to you.